Hello everyone, my name is Kurt Loser and this is my final research paper on NIL and the benefits and advantages it provides student athletes beyond the obvious newfound financial compensation. So real briefly, I just wanted to provide a timeline of the NIL to give you guys an idea in the context of how it came to be. And after you review it, you can kind of see that now that we're 3 years in, it has become common and mainstream. The arguments against amateurism have been basically disproven. Uh, NIL minimizes corruption, scandal, and sanctions. The once found or believed fear of negative effects to women's sports have been disproven through a multitude of metrics. And students are reporting real world experience and engagement through managing their own brands, businesses, and finances. So the NIL basically is all gains, no pains. Continuing on with a brief history, Justice Neil Gorsuch was one of the justices presiding over the case, and in his ruling for the majority, he stated that traditions alone cannot justify the NCAA's decision to build a massive money-raising enterprise on the backs of students who are not fairly compensated. Nowhere else in America can businesses get away with agreeing to not pay their workers a fair market rate on the theory that their product is defined by not paying their workers a fair market rate. And under ordinary principles of antitrust law, it is not evident why college sports should be any different. Therefore, the NCAA is not above the law. And sort of in a concurring agreement, Justice Brett Kavanaugh added that the bottom line is that the NCAA and its members or member colleges are suppressing the pay of student athletes who collectively generate billions of dollars in revenues for colleges every year. Those enormous sums of money flow to seemingly everyone except the student athletes. So these two, among other justices, were sort of critical in getting this passed and using logic and other models of businesses to argue what fair compensation exactly is. So that brings us to fair compensation. What is it and why is it important? The idea of fair compensation in college athletics is the historically debated topic and in recent years has been expanded beyond the academic incentives historically employed to reward students for the revenues they generate through their additional work, effort, and sacrifice. Considering the intense training, practices, and competition to attain peak performance, being a student athlete is a significant commitment akin to a full-time job, and therefore demands further compensation for the efforts put forth. Maintaining game day mental and physical conditioning and preparedness also requires significant time away from academic studies, the very thing they were compensated for in the first place. And this impacts students' athletes' abilities to focus on their education. Such hard work, like most enterprises in America, should be balanced financially rather than, sort of adding a workload at a reduced or free cost. Additionally, NIL has established a myriad of methods to earn fair compensation for the involved workloads of student athletes, affording flexibility to a generation that has established and influenced popular culture to cater to their interests, desires, humor, and nostalgia. As I mentioned in the intro, the variety and flexibility of how to utilize NIL for financial gains makes it an attractive prospect to most students. And because the money is independent of the institution, they can still receive scholarships and financial aid. So things like autographs, memorabilia, brand creation and endorsement, blogging, podcasting, merchandising, personal appearances, camps, clinics, public speaking, affiliate roles, even monikers, trademarks, logos are all now legally pursuable. And perhaps most crucially, it provides athletes with that choice of what to engage in and what to sort of ignore. And then, of course, compared to the old model that was laden with secrecy, violations, and sanctions for all these types of incentives, NIL is a vast improvement that not only provides fair compensation, but treats athletes as humans and potential entrepreneurs rather than entertainment shows to be used and, of course, later recycled when they graduate. While endorsements and sponsorships are typically the highest paying deal student athletes can achieve, research suggests that there are various ways that these students can earn NIL compensation without really even stepping foot outside. Monikers, trademarks, maxims, and logos are excellent foundations each athlete should experiment with when beginning their NIL saga. These are excellent first steps every athlete should consider to obtain income through performance and creativity with minimal output beyond creating the logo, which is often outsourced, and filling out a trademark application. And some of these that you are seeing right here are some of the ones that are current athletes. Spencer Rattler in the middle, Haley Van Lift in the bottom left, Julian Humphrey from the Georgia Bulldogs is top left at Julio Island. Prove 'em Wrong is from George Karlaftis of Purdue, who is actually a Super Bowl champion on the Kansas City Chiefs now. And the son is Lexi Sun of Nebraska uh, volleyball, I believe. So you can see that there's really no one type of athlete, no one type of sport. It really is just up to your creativity and imagination. And things like the D and the R, that's Damani Robertson or D Money. So if you can create a fun little play on words or things like that, it's just all about visibility and sort of having folks remember you and remember your brand. So politics is another surprising intersection with NIL. In 2022, former University of Tennessee Martin quarterback Dresser Wynn made history as the first collegiate athlete to endorse a political candidate who was a family friend, Colin Johnson, in the election for the district attorney of Tennessee's 27th Judicial District. And in the top right corner of Mr. Wynn there, you can see the t-shirt that he wore at his camps. Um, he was raised in a rural West Tennessee town that Colin Johnson also was from, and so they were long associates, and they agreed to uh, sort of collaborate. And in that collaboration, it was very minor that he just wore that T-shirt at his football camp that he hosted every year. He then, of course, took pictures and posted them to his Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages, and and it was successful. They, of course, never discussed payout figures or if that his influence really had any sort of impact on the campaign. But Colin Johnson did end up winning his district, and so one has to imagine that that local folklore sort of hero and celebrity that he was able to obtain definitely helped his campaign. And this example also just sort of illustrates and magnifies that multitasking between revenue sources, that the value of NIL in the right hands is tremendously powerful. And finally, to social media, it is king, but engagement is queen, and she definitely influences the king's position. Blake Lawrence, founder of NIL database of Opendoors, recently reported that the average NIL compensation for an athlete with over 50,000 social media followers is about $11,000 per year. And however, one with under 5,000 is only about $300. And some of these things that you're seeing on the left here: be authentic, tell your story, engage and align. Those are just tips from current and former NIL earners of how to really sort of appropriately run your social media campaigns so as to not alienate or sort of draw any negativity, and really just allow folks to choose you or not based on your authenticity and the person that you are, because as we're learning in year three, the draw to athletes is their story, is their location, is that relatability. And so if you can sort of attach that to your social media outlets, it's only going to help you further your NIL compensation. So these are just three NIL success stories that I sort of focused on in my paper. The first, above the realm, is from former The Ohio State University linebacker Taraja Mitchell. He graduated with a design, fashion, and retail studies degree, and in late 2021, only about 6 months after NIL signed into law, he launched his clothing brand, Above the Realm. And you can kind of see a couple of his hoodies there. One with Above the Realm on it, and then Strivers Only is sort of like the catchphrase or moniker that's behind that. The second there in the middle is Believe, and again, you can see his logo has a couple things going on. Believe winner, provider, be one of one. He was number 11 at UCLA, and his story is interesting because he was a third string quarterback when he launched this brand and business. And at that point, it was evident that you don't have to, your performance does not have to be stellar. You don't have to be necessarily, though UCLA is a large college, you don't have to be from some of these AAA colleges to find success with NIL. And finally, on the right, Chloe Mitchell was a volleyball player at Aquinas College. Um, and she, through social media, was able to post some of her pandemic, I guess you could say, coping mechanisms by uh, remodeling her parents' backyard. And through that, she gained a lot of followers on TikTok and was able to, with the help of her father, launch a app called Playbooked that is specifically designed to facilitate NIL deals for other student athletes. And so, and nowadays, she is a podcast um, host, and she does not do volleyball anymore, but you can see that she was able to use that platform to gain notoriety and be successful in the podcasting business. So in my paper, I wanted to make sure to talk about how NIL affects women's sports specifically because I think that's an important facet that maybe people don't realize. So the increased viewership, very topical. The March Madness tournament just concluded about a month ago, and thanks to notable participants like Paige Beckers, Camila Cardosa, and Caitlin Clark, the women's title game almost doubled from last year's 9.9 million to this year's 18.8 million, and quadrupled from the 4.12 million that was reported in March 2021 before the NIL was signed into law. And adding to these impressive numbers, the 18.9 million viewers for the 2024 Women's NCAA Championship game was 28% more than the 14.8 million viewers for the men's matchup, which is obviously unprecedented if you follow college sports. And a final mention of that game is that it was the most watched basketball game of any kind since 2019, both men's, women's, professional, and amateur, and the most watched spring sporting event in the last 5 years, with the exception of likely the Super Bowl and the Olympic Games. In addition, the NIL is promoting graduation. The increased exposure of star athletes to a broader audience, many college stars, especially women, are enticed to stay in college longer to learn and earn from NIL, expand their brand or business, and grow their star power. And Bruce B. Siegel, a partner in the entertainment and sports practice group, was quoted as saying that the NIL may take the pressure off to feel like you've got to go pro early, especially when pro does not exist. And even if it does, why not continue in college knowing that you can earn revenue and help support yourself, help support your family, and most importantly, graduate and get the education? So as you can see, NIL is doing more than just financially compensating folks. It's providing them real world experience and giving them incentive to stay in school, which I think a lot of not only family members, but just that's the general perception is that's what people should do. If you go to college, you should stay till you graduate. And these were some of the future research topics that I had kind of idealized as I was going through and researching the topics. Some of them are pretty straightforward, the NIL and mental health. I believe that we will find that the NIL does increase or improve the mental health of student athletes. And that while financial compensation isn't everything, folks like Chloe Mitchell actually have been on record as saying that the positivity, community, and connection one can experience from social media actually helped her out of her depression. Of course, that was during COVID, so there's some context behind that, but it's still possible. Of course, the middle unionization, is that the next step? We have Dartmouth's men's basketball who recently filed for a union. UAB, I just read in my algorithm now is all about NIL since I've been researching it to the nines. So I read an article that the UAB Players Association is is going to try to unionize their players. And I wanted to briefly mention the Texas One Fund because this is really great. This just came out. It says that the Longhorn Focused NIL Collective has partnered with a global financial services and technology company to provide an NIL deal for every student athlete at the University of Texas. In addition, it will offer financial literacy training and money management programs. So I thought that was really key, is to not only somehow get some sort of base pay for every college athlete, but then also provide those sort of training sessions and really real world application to take whatever they're experiencing or learning now and sort of can you apply or translate that into some sort of future business or career. And then finally on the right, the transfer portal. This is where things could get tricky, and potentially harm the amateurism that they once touted as, potentially being the downfall or the mistake of passing NIL through. And it's founded. By the time most of these high profile athletes do graduate, they have been to multiple universities. And I think, as I mentioned in the social media slide, a lot of the draw of these of following and paying for ads and their merchandise and things is feeling that association, that connection, that they're just down the street from me and I want to support that person. If they start zooming all over the country, like a lot of them already have, that's going to present, I think, a fatigue to the sport, and it will remind people of professional sports and potentially the reasons they don't like them. And so that's something that I think bears future research, is how can we sort of still allow freedom to move about and capitalize on your NIL popularity and momentum, but at the same time sort of motivate folks to just stay where they are and give back to the community and sort of engage with folks as they once did when they first got there. So thank you all for sticking around. I obviously went a little long as usual. I apologize for that. But just as in closing, I do believe that NIL allows students real world experience in collaborating with agents, negotiating deals, managing personal and communal finances, and building a sustainable enterprise that might serve as a foundation to their eventual career. Through things like social media, students learn how to maintain a positive online presence and mental health while managing and persevering through potential negative comments, privacy concerns, and the pressure to perform. And of course, engaging in the political campaigns, as my guy dresser there in the top right, it provides students with PR experience, networking, marketing, and professional communication skills. So should he have political aspirations, he knows not only where to get his start, but knowing that folks are also ready and willing to help him succeed. So that's about all I have for the name, image, and likeness. Again, thank you for your time, and I'll see you guys on the post.